Welcome back. Today, as part of my chess development, I'm going to try to solve a few mate in 2 puzzles on Lichess, and then I'm going to analyze my last couple of rapid games over there to see if I can learn something. So let's just switch over here, and I've already pulled up my puzzle dashboard, puzzles by themes on Lichess, and I'm going to select mate in 2. I'm going to try to do, 4 or 5 of these just to kind of work it through my head and then do the analysis. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to just go to the analysis, which usually takes so long I don't have time left for anything else. So I'm doing these first. Well, knowing that it's a mate in 2 helps a lot. So let's start by looking at the checks. I have a check here with the bishop. I have a check here with the rook. I have a check over here with the queen. So let's see what the problems with all of those checks are. The check with the bishop, I think the problem is they can take with the rook, and then the only follow-up checks I have then would lose the rook or the queen, and they wouldn't be mate. The check with the rook, only legal move is for them to take it, and then I drop that bishop back down over there to f1, and I think that's checkmate. What about this check with the queen? It looks like that one they can block with the bishop, they can block with the knight, they can block with the rook, and then I don't have a mate in 1. And if they block with the rook, I have a mate in 1. But I think if they block with the other 2, I do not have a mate in 1. So I think it's taking with the rook here on h2. Only legal move is for them to take back, and then I have to move the bishop. I have to move the bishop to f1 to block the g2 square from the king, and then nothing else can get in the way. Okay, that was it. Wow. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't find that in a game, but that's one reason to do these puzzles is so that, during a game you might recognize that, wait a minute, I had a puzzle very similar to this. Maybe I have a mate. Okay, that was one. Let's go into another one. And again, it does definitely help to know that you have a checkmate. Here, checks here, that looks like it loses, and then I don't have a checkmate. Wait, what about putting the queen in here? Oh no, then their knight takes. Wait, I bet that's it, right? It's giving up the queen because the knight's protecting the queen, so they can't take it, and they can't move out up here because of my dark squared bishop guarding h2. So if I check on g1 with my queen, they have to take with their knight. And then me putting my knight over here where the queen is now is checkmate, I think. Wow. In a game, if I found that, I would probably be doing it to fork or something, and I wouldn't realize it was a mate until it happened because of the bishop guarding that square. Okay, next. Again, let's look at the checks. If I check with the... I think that's it. Every one of these looks like a sacrifice. If I check with the rook, they can't come back out because my queen's guarding g8. They can't take it with the king because my pawn is protecting the rook, so they would have to take with the pawn, and then I would have checkmate with my queen to f7, because with that pawn and rook out of the way, they would have their own pieces keeping the king from moving side to side, and nothing is able to block that. So I believe this is it. Yes. Yeah, the own pieces there keep the king from moving, and then my queen cuts off the squares in the middle. That one I got a little faster. Next. It took me a second to find their king stuck here in the middle of the board. Looks like I have 3 checks. I have a check with the bishop on c3, which I think they would just take, and then I do not have a mate. I have a check with the queen on b4. I think the only thing they can do there is block with the pawn, and then I checkmate. The other check that I saw was this one, but that's not a mate, right? Okay. Do they have any other legal move if I check with queen to b4? They can't. Oh, they could come up, but if they come up, then I still have mate on queen to c3, right? So they can come up. They can't go down because my bishop's cutting off that square. My queen's hitting this whole diagonal. So I think their only choices are to come forward with the pawn to block, and then I have checkmate, or to come forward with the king, and either way I have checkmate with the queen on c3. All right, let's do one more. Well, again, I have multiple checks, and a couple of them fail immediately, right? Queen capturing on f2 fails because their rook could capture that. For that matter, their king could take it. I have a check with the queen to g2, but the king or the rook could take there. I can put the queen on h3, but they can get out of check. They can block with the rook. Okay, now wait a minute. If I go here and they block with the rook... Oh, no, I was going to say I had another check down on h1, but then they just block with the rook again. Okay, so that's not mate in 2. I also have the check with the queen to e2, but the king can come out to g2. I could check again with the bishop, but then they take that with the rook. So, and checking down on d1 doesn't do any good, right? Because their queen's guarding that square. I could bring the rook over to prepare something, but no, then they take my queen. Okay, so that's not good. What about bishop to h3? Bishop to h3 allows the king to move over to e1 or the rook to block. Well, let's examine both of those. If the king moves over to get out of check, then I bring my rook over to e8, and I think that's mate. Yeah, this one's a little harder than some of those others, I guess, because there were so many options. Because my queen's cutting off these squares and my bishop would be cutting off those squares, then my rook would hit that. No, that's still not a mate in two. Because if they come over and I come over, they can block with the rook, and it still might be mate. Well, for that matter, they can block with the queen, and that still might be mate, but it's not mate in two. And if they block with the rook, it's not mate in two, okay? See, I would probably try one of those in a game, but they're not mate in two, and there might be a way for the opponent to get out of them, but it has to be a mate in two. Oh, there's another check I missed. Queen to d3 check allows the king to come over to e1. It allows the king to come out to g2. Okay, if the king comes out to e1, then I think bringing the rook over is still not mate in two because, again, they have two blocks. Now, it might be winning because I would just take each one of those, but what if the king goes to g2? Okay, well, I looked at this for a long time. I paused the recording. I do know that the first move has to be a check, right? Because if it's not, they're going to move this rook someplace, and I'm going to be in check, and then I won't be able to make the second move that I wanted to. So I know the first move has to be a check, but I think I've exhausted all the possible checks here. I think those are all the possible checks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 checks, and I'm pretty sure none of them are a forced mate in two. But I'm going to go through each one of them just one more time before I choose one. This is not a mate in two, because when they block, I can check again here, and they get out. Or if they move over, and I check again with the rook, they can block. Two different ways. And it still might be mate, but that's more like a mate in four. Checking here just loses the queen, so it's not that one. Checking here, king comes out to g2, and I can come back and check, or check again with the bishop, but that's not a mate because of this rook is here. Checking down here, I just, the queen takes. Checking over here forces king to g2 or e1, and if it goes to g2, the only good check I have would be with the bishop, and then it's not a mate in two. If it goes to e1, the only other good check that I have, I think, no, okay, back up. If the king goes to e1, then I have a mate immediately, so that is a mate in two, but it doesn't have to go to e1. Okay, I did find a mate in two, but only if the king goes to e1. What if the king goes to g2? Because that's not a mate. Yeah, okay, it's queen to d3. Wow, I missed some things. Yeah, definitely if it comes over, I have a mate here. If it goes up to g2, I swing back all the way over to h3 with my queen, and that's mate. Okay, it went there, so that's mate. That one took me too long to see, and I think it's because there were so many possible checks I started getting mixed up. But I forgot that, the queen can move again after it checks on d3. Wow. All right, well, I'm going to go to my archive and pull up the last few rapid games that I haven't covered yet and see if I can learn from them. All right, in this first game we're going to take a look at, I did win against an opponent whose username is Liberty Forever 1776. So I'm guessing that's an American and a very patriotic one at that. I won because they resigned here, which surprised me because I thought we were in a drawn position during the game. Now, I had a couple of minutes more left on my clock than my opponent did, but the game review here actually says that in this position, my opponent's leading, and I don't know if we run the engine a little bit longer if it'll still say that, but it looks like they're up a little bit, more than -1. And I'm guessing at least part of that -1 comes from the fact that they have an extra pawn. One of those two is extra. I just have this one in between them, and, they have things that they can do with those pawns here in a second. I think my king might be just a little bit safer than theirs, but not by much, because if I ever move this queen off, off this second rank, like if I go to take that pawn or something, they're getting in here and fast. But I thought if, maybe I could shuffle here, not there, but, shuffle here somewhere, I would be all right. I wasn't sure what to do once these pawns started coming down, but I thought we were drawn and my opponent resigned. So, thank you to my opponent for that. I got 5 rating points for it. But I was ahead earlier in the game, so I'm going to go to, there's 2 points here. You can see on the graph, I gave away an advantage. My opponent didn't take advantage of it, and then I gave it away again. Now, we did come back to even over here, and I slowly gave that away. But it looks like right here is where I should have capitalized on something. I'm going to turn that off by clicking the Z key. Okay, what did I play? Oh, I took back the bishop, but okay, that was a mistake. That was the whole reason I had just put the knight up there, was so when they took my bishop, I could take theirs. Whichever way they did it, I think they took this way. But I should have done something different. Should I have taken back with my king and left my knight up there? Well, that's the only other thing I can think of. They've just taken my bishop. I have to take back, but apparently it was a mistake to take back with the knight. So let's turn this back on and see. Oh yeah, the only thing that keeps my advantage is taking back with the queen. Okay, well, I don't know why, but maybe we'll find out in just a second. Because when I took back with my knight, what they should have done is checked me here, and I would have had to have moved over one way or the other, probably to h1 to protect the pawn, because if I came over to f1, they could have taken my h-pawn. Okay, so they should have checked me. I would have moved over, and then they would have gotten my rook. That's why my king had to be there. I get it now. Okay, because my king would have been protecting the f3 square. Okay, so I do understand, but my opponent didn't see it. They instead brought that knight back. Nobody knows why. I'm guessing maybe they were trying to get their queen and bishop out on this diagonal, but probably not there. Or maybe they were thinking about starting to push their f-pawn at this point. And now what I had to do was, again, protect the f3 square, but I didn't see it. Or maybe I did see it. I saw the coming fork, and I decided I didn't want it to be a check. But then my opponent saw that even if it's not a check, they can play there. And I should have played rook to e3. Oh, I did play rook to e3. Well, good for me. Oh, but they get the h-pawn now. Okay. So I should have played rook to e3 before they put the knight in there, because it was still a fork that still comes with a check. I have to go back to the knight, and they get out, and they're attacking my rook again, and I put my rook back, and they're ahead. Okay, so I do understand now that here I should have taken back with the king, because that would have disallowed the knight to f3 check. All right, I understand. Well, let's go on to, I was going to say go to this last point here, but it looks like I didn't make any mistakes. We're even. And none of these moves, okay, one was an inaccuracy. Okay, well, let's turn this off. That was a blunder that took us back to even. And what I played was, I took their rook, but that wasn't the best move. You know what? I'm just going to leave the lines on here, because otherwise I should have played knight to, what? Yep, I don't know what happened. Okay. That's been happening recently. I will go to draw an arrow and pieces will just start moving, and I don't know why it did that. But the line says the only move that keeps us perfectly even is knight to e7 check, which it'll be protected by my rook, so they wouldn't take. So I would play that, they would move over, and then I would go back, and they would come back, and it says, and then I would take. Sorry, how would that be different than now? This is what my question. Why is checking first better than taking the rook? Because the engine expects that after I check, they'll move over, then I'll come right back to where I am, and they'll move back, and I'll take the rook, and they'll take with their queen. So we'd be in the exact position if I took the rook now and they took with their queen, except the engine says if I took the rook now, they're not going to take with the queen. They're going to check me knight to g4 first, and then take. But if that's the case, then when we repeated the position and I ended up here, then that's what they should do, right? Because that's what it says. We're going to repeat, and we're going to end up in the exact position that we are now, and then I'm going to take the rook. But that's better somehow. Okay, so I have no idea why this put it at minus 0 point something, because it's the exact same thing as if I had went with the 0.0 line. The only difference here is that they can check knight to g4 first, and that's somehow better, but they could have done it in the other line too. But anyway, they did that. Now, on the previous turn, the line actually said I would play king to g1, but here it says king to h3 is better. But instead, I went this way, and now they can take my knight, which they did. So again, don't know how it's better. But okay, now I can play king to h3, and that's the only move that keeps us close to even. When I played knight to f3 instead, and that's the inaccuracy that put me behind for good, because my opponent can play rook to e8. It's my best move to just defend my rook, but instead they took, and then they resigned. All right, well, I'm not sure how they were ahead again, other than that one extra pawn, and I'm definitely not sure why the moves I played were not ideal, except I think I do understand why moving the queen over to protect the rook would have been better than taking, and I definitely understand the mistake earlier in the game. So let's go on to the next game. In this game, according to the game review here on Lichess, I didn't make any mistakes, and my opponent only made one, and they resigned after 17 moves. So I don't think there's a need to turn on the engine. Just we were even here after 10 moves. And here's where my opponent made a mistake. And what they played was bishop to c1, which is back to its home square. I'm guessing that they should have castled here. I mean, their bishop is, I guess, needed to guard this pawn because I'm about to take. And if their bishop's on the home square, then I can take. And when they take back, I'm going to get that pawn too and be aiming down here. I'm pretty sure that here what my opponent was worried about is me taking the b pawn and winning their rook. So I'm guessing they should have either moved the b pawn, which is probably what I would have done. I probably would have played b6 here, or if they had put the knight on d2, where it would be protected by the bishop, then if I took the d pawn, they could castle, and the rooks would be protecting each other, right? So they would have just lost a pawn out of the deal. So I'm going to guess they should have either played castling or b6, or just dropped the queen back one. The queen would have protected that. Okay, castling. Nope. It says either castling or knight to d2, or queen to e2 showed up for a second. I don't know what queen to d1 does. That doesn't guard that at all. Oh, queen to d1 allows me to take the pawn, but then they can move the knight out and their queen will be protecting the rook. But then I would get this one too, wouldn't I? Well, yeah, that's what they did. They were going back to protect that pawn. I would have played queen to e2 here, but what's the problem with that? That would have allowed me to take here. And it says they would have taken back with their pawn, but no, of course not. Of course they wouldn't. Oh, yes, they would, because if they took back with the bishop, I have another c-pawn. Okay, I think I understand. But yeah, castling is probably what I would do. And it says then I wouldn't take this because, again, I would probably worry about getting my queen trap. But no, I still think I get 2 pawns out of that deal. But I might be giving up this one, my front c-pawn. Yeah, I mean, I might have made a similar mistake in my opponent's case. I'm pretty sure I would not have played bishop to c1, but I would have done something that wasn't one of those moves. They did that. I was pretty sure that allowed me to take here. Is that my best move? It is my best move, but now I see that I didn't play it, so I must not have been sure of that during the game. But right now, as soon as that bishop moved, I thought, oh wow, I should just take this pawn now. But I didn't. I got this knight out. Well, that allows them to take me, but they didn't. They got their knight out. Well, that allows me to take this pawn because when they take back, I'll get 2 pawns, right? But I moved the knight over here to help defend that. I guess I thought I didn't have enough pieces on it. Well, now they're supposed to take my front c-pawn, but they instead put their knight over here to help guard that. I'm supposed to take that pawn now, and I finally did. That was a bunch of inaccuracies right through there. And they're supposed to play either g4 to hit my knight or castle. But instead they took there, and the engine has decided that my best move is a5. Isn't that special? Here I was very strongly tempted to take this pawn. If they took back, I would get the knight too. And it says that would be okay. But one reason I had gotten this knight out and put it up here was so that I could get the bishop out and castle. And right here looked like a pretty good time to get the bishop out. So I did. I got it out with check. They're supposed to block with their bishop, and they did. So I took it, which means they either have to move the knight or their king. It says it's better to take with the king. I probably would have done the same thing as my opponent. They took with the knight so they didn't have to move their king so they could still castle. But that means I can get this pawn, which I didn't see. I was trying to get that knight to move so I could get this pawn, which I did. Now, of course, their queen is in danger, and I'm threatening a fork. That's why their best move is queen to c3, because not only does it, put pressure on the knight, but it guards that square and gets the knight out of danger. It says once they did that, I would castle. I don't know. But instead they went there, so I checked them, and they have to move their king, but instead they resigned. So even though I missed a few things in the middle, I think I was doing okay, and I didn't blunder anything away. And I'm only up 1 pawn here. So if my opponent had put their queen on c3 like they were supposed to, then I wouldn't have had this. But now I'm going to go up the exchange once they move their king out of check. So I would have been up 3 points of material. So I think that queen move should have been counted as a mistake because we were at -2 when they played that. It's -4.5. Okay, so they didn't just make one mistake, which was putting the bishop back on its home square. I think this should have also been counted as a mistake as well because it doubled my advantage, more than doubled my advantage. Okay, well that's 2 games in a row that I won, one of which I was behind in somehow, and this one which I was definitely ahead. I think I have 1 more game to go, so let's switch over to that one. All right, in this game I lost just a couple of moves after that, and I think I remember what I did. I think what I did was I pre-moved a couple of takebacks, even though I didn't have to because I'm up nearly a minute on time already, and also it's a 10-minute game. I don't have to pre-move. I think my excuse for that is way back on move 3 or 4, my opponent started taking a really long time to make a couple of moves. And usually when that happens, I guess it gets under my skin, and maybe that's intentional on the part of the opponent, and it worked, but it gets under my skin, so I start moving faster to kind of counteract it. Like I think on move 4 or 5, they took about 30 seconds, which is an incredibly long time in a 10-minute game for a move that early in the opening. Yeah, it was this move right here. When after I played e3, which, I mean, all this is a normal English setup, my opponent took more than 30 seconds to play d6. And I don't know what d5 is actually their best move according to the engine. Castling is fine, and d6 is their 3rd best move, which is, also keeps us within a reasonable range. So I don't know if those were the 3 moves they were deciding between. But yeah, spending 30 seconds on move 5 was, well, it was irritating to say the least. We're now out on move 16, and again, like I said, I had started pre-moving, so I think I made some mistakes with my pre-moves. My next move here was a mistake. I played knight to d5, and I'm guessing I should have just taken this pawn. And I don't think this was a pre-move. No, I spent 9 seconds on that, but that was a blunder. Should I have just taken, or should I have pushed past? I should have pushed past. I definitely should not have taken. Okay, the only move that keeps my +2 advantage is pushing past. That makes total sense. It would have given me not quite connect 4 because I've already pushed this pawn. But it would have done away with any danger posed by this pawn if I had just pushed forward, right? I guess I could have chipped away at that other one this way later. Okay, I understand d5, but I'm not sure what's wrong with putting my knight up there That gives them a very slight advantage. They take it, and I'm going to take back. And here, the engine says they should just push this pawn forward, and then I'm going to push past. The problem here is my queen is undefended. I don't understand exactly, why the engine thinks pushing forward is better than taking. If I was my opponent, I would have definitely taken here too. And it says if they took there, then I would come down. But instead, I pre-moved the take back of this pawn. So yeah, elementary blunder. I left my queen undefended. So when they did that, I took back, and of course they took my queen. And by that point, I already didn't care about the game, so I just resigned. But I should have taken a little bit more care. I don't know that here I would have found d5, but I could have survived after playing this mistake by not pre-moving the take back here and losing my queen. When they take there, I can take their queen. It says we're even, or I could drop back, or I could get in front of that pawn. Now it says if I play queen to d1 or queen to d3, either one of those, they're going to put their queen on c5, which not only protects those two pawns, but attacks mine. And of course, if I take their queen, they're going to take back. All right, so I definitely understand this one, and I remember, playing the game. I remember that huge time period at the beginning when we're still in the middle of the opening. I'm thinking, wait, what huge trap are they about to pull on me? And then they played a completely normal move. And then a couple of moves later, it took like 15 seconds for a completely normal move, and I should have reacted better to that. So that's another lesson I can learn is when my opponent does something that seems odd to me with their time usage, I shouldn't read anything into it and react badly, because it very easily could have been a friend or a parent coming up to them and asking them a question. So they can't make the move right now. They have to, respond to that and then come back and go, wait, where was I? I have to take that into account. That's a me problem. But anyway, I think I learned something from each one of these. If you saw something that I missed, feel free to let me know. Thank you for spending your time here, and I'll see you next time.